In today's video, I'm going to ask a question. Could we choose to give another meaning to what appears to be a difficult situation? My name is Jessica Madden. On my YouTube channel, I talk about inspiring ideas. After learning amazing lessons in my life, I share the tips I learned along the way of my life and my journey and the amazing life experience I have. Reminding you once again that the 100th YouTube subscriber will receive a free gift which I will ship around the world wherever you are for free. Right, let's jump right into it. Could we choose to give another meaning to what appears to be a difficult situation? I was listening to Aaron Doughty and I heard him talk about a story of Tony Robbins, a story where Tony Robbins was at a conference. And whilst he was talking at this conference, the train zoomed past every half hour. And the people at the conference got very, very frustrated every time that train passed. So every half hour, he saw the people in the audience cringing. So he turned to his audience and he said, could we choose to give another meaning to what appears to be a very difficult situation? And he said, you know what? Let's decide that when the train goes past, it is a joyous time. It is an amazing thing that a train turns its wheels and goes along the tracks with such amazing scientific engineering. They tried it once, didn't work. Tried it a second time, it didn't work. But by the fifth time, it worked. It took 5 tries to get it, which means it's not always going to work right away. But it worked after 5 times. And after the 5th time, the 6th time, the audience would cheer in happiness and excitement when the train went past. Isn't that fascinating? You know, I mentioned this a couple of days ago. I put out on Facebook a post about how we could feel joyous on a rainy day, on a cloudy day. When lots of people around us appear to be in a bad mood because of the weather, we could change that and we could turn the day into another meaning. We could find another meaning for the day. I've spoken about this before, and that is the amazing meditation which you could do, and it's a very quick meditation you could do when you're not feeling great, and that is smile. That is one trick you could do on a rainy day. But on Facebook, I mentioned 12 different tips. You can check me out on Facebook. It's for the public to see. 12 different tips I suggested you could do, and you could look at a rainy day and you could take a rainy day and see it differently. You know, today it became 4 years since I last saw my children. 4 years. The pain is real. The pain is still raw. But I have interpreted the situation with a different meaning. I refuse to see what happened to me as something that happened to me. I prefer to see it as something that happened for me. Like I said in previous videos in the past few weeks, life happens for you, not to you. And the reason why I'm pointing at my head is because it's basically in the head when it's like a smash in the head when you believe life happens to you. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I'm pointing to the heart because I've mentioned this a lot of times in previous videos, how the dynamic of the heart, the unity within the heart, the connection within the heart, which could connect to your own brain and your subconscious brain and to the people around you, has a powerful effect when you work from your heart. That's why I did that. So I've looked back in the past 4 years, and I've realized that I've really grown spiritually. And I've gained maturity and clarity. I couldn't have had this I didn't have this kind of maturity and clarity 4 years ago. None of it. It took what appeared to be a difficult situation for me to get along this journey. I've also come along this journey now with a lot of spiritual elements to my journey. I've spoken about how I lost weight and how I see things differently. I don't respond. I don't react on impulse. A lot of people react on impulse. They get that damning email and they respond right away with anger. I've changed that. I don't curse anymore, which is beautiful. Um, this is my shirt today. It says "Follow that dream." I don't know if you can see it perfectly, but that's basically it. I feel like I followed a dream. What I mean is that sometimes I ask myself, Jessica, wait a second, is this real? I'm like pinching myself. Is this real? I'm like, didn't cry once today. It being 4 years since I've last seen my children. On Shavuot, I'd started this spiritual journey prior to Shavuot. I didn't cry once this year on Shavuot. Missing my children, yes, but not crying, because I've interpreted a new meaning into my life. In the past, last year on Shavuot, I cried the entire day practically. I remember crawling into bed, squeezing myself into fetal position, crying like crazy last year and the year before. And I also remember 3 years ago when I realized it was 1 year since I last saw my children. For 36 hours, I was in absolute agony and tears. And I was unconsolable. This year, didn't cry once today. I found another meaning. I interpret my situation in an entirely different way. I've become a very spiritual person in this process. I've gained maturity and clarity, which I didn't have 4 years ago. So I am so pleased to God, to the universe, to the angels around me for doing and creating my life this way. I also want to point out that I now believe in incarnation, so it helps a lot. When you believe in incarnation, you really don't take life as serious. You don't take life as heavy, as damaging and damning as you did in the past. So that's how I've interpreted the meaning to my life, to my predicament, to my situation. Carrying on to what I had seen from Aaron Doughty, he carries on talking about an amazing story by Victor Frankel. Now, for those who don't know, Victor Frankel is a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote a fascinating book. I can't remember the exact title of the book, but in the book he talks about how he was able to live through the camps in the Holocaust with blessings and with different meaning, to the meaning which he insisted on putting on his predicament, on his situation. And only if you've been through something very difficult, something really painful, could you really, really, really internalize what that means. I guess I could say I can internalize that, because for me it's been extremely painful. But now, since I've put a different meaning and different interpretation to my life, I could really relate to Victor Frankel's. Okay, I can't entirely relate. It's not the Holocaust, but I could really understand where Victor Frankel is coming from. He says he put a different meaning, but those who didn't put a different meaning to that situation, those who couldn't do it, they didn't survive. You know, Victor Frankel writes in his book that there were people who the Nazis rounded up. And when the Nazis rounded them up, they told the Nazis, I've got credentials, I have a PhD, I have a doctorate in engineering, I have a doctorate in science, I have a doctorate in psychology, etc. The Nazi, he described a few stories like this. The Nazis took those certifications, those qualifications, ripped them up, and threw in the garbage bin. And they said, now you have nothing. And those people fell to pieces because their entire validation was from others. They built their entire life by studying and giving themselves a meaning and having certification and qualifications. And as a result, they needed the validation from others. So when the Nazis ripped up their papers, they found no meaning left in life. And they didn't make it. So a lot of people didn't make it because of that. Because they allowed their meaning, the validation, to be interpreted by others. They allowed life to happen to them, but not for them. And they didn't make it. So that's a fascinating story. He also mentions a very interesting story that happened when he was contemplating prior to the Holocaust. Victor Frankel describes in his book that he was contemplating prior to the Holocaust whether he should go to America. He was able to get a visa to travel to America, and he could have escaped the Holocaust. But he was very concerned because his elderly parents couldn't make the trip. So he asked his parents what to do. they said, you have to save your life, etc. But then he was in his parents' house, and he said, he asked his dad, what is this stone over here? He said, this stone I actually got from a synagogue which was smashed down on Kristallnacht. And on the stone was written, respect your father. And Victor Frankel got the message, and he said, I gotta save my life, true, but giving a meaning to life by respecting my father is paramount. And he stayed behind, and he helped his father, and he survived in the end, and he found his family, and it all worked out beautifully. And he writes that his best-selling book was, it's interesting, he says, my best-selling book was considered a bestseller, but I'm going to put it in the link down below what his book is called. But he said, this best-selling book shouldn't have been a bestseller. People should know that on their own. So he was a bit like, it's interesting how he looked at that. And he said, people shouldn't be so it's such a dilemma. People shouldn't be so confused about life. Life should be their own meaning, not interpreted by others. Fascinating stuff, fascinating vibes, and high frequency. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Reminding you once again, if you like the video, you can press the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can press the subscribe button. And please share away this video on social media. Awesome, fascinating stuff, fascinating vibes, and high frequency. If you want to leave me a comment, please leave me a comment down below. And if you want to contact me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or email, I'll put the links down below. Awesome vibes. Also, please let me know what you thought about yesterday's video. Episode 5, transition. Let me know what you think about it. I look forward to hearing from you. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video.